dress code. So this is also in the checklist. Most important thing is that you're wearing your daily lanyard with your name tag attached, as well as a harmonica that I'm going to explain why on that later. That just lets, you know, kids, coworkers, and other people in the building know that you're with the Boys and Girls Club. Also, avoid excessively revealing clothing. Now, this isn't the sort of thing where I'm like, women's shoulders are distracting to men, so cover them up. It's way more like, if it isn't functional, that's when we're going to have issues. So if you can't run around in it because it's so baggy, if you're constantly having to pull it up because it just keeps falling, if you're afraid of it getting torn up while playing at club because it's already like aesthetically ripped, maybe don't wear it at club, right? Also, you need to be able to like move around, run around. So shoes that work for that, good idea. High heels, not a great idea. Flip-flops, not a great idea. Also, layers are very important because sometimes you're outside supervising play. So make sure you're warm and comfortable and able to do that, right? So also we are we're matching mask policy. So the schools have recently gone to mask optional. So we're doing the same thing. Wear it if you don't feel well, wear if it makes you feel comfortable. Okay, now we're going to talk about snack. Here's another policy. So we get our food from the food bank, and the food bank is a federally funded program. So they have some unique federal requirements that we have to meet. First one is for it to be food safe, FDA standard. It needs to be outside of refrigerated areas no more than 2 hours total. Now that includes the time it takes for the food bank to get it from their site here and for us to take it from here to our site and put it in the fridge, and when it's sitting out for the kids to get. So you can imagine we need to have it out, serve it, and put it away pretty quickly. We can bring it back out at the end of the day to send extra with kids or to do a second snack, because sometimes that 5 to 6 time. But for the most part, we need to have it tucked away in order to keep it safe. Washing hands. Anybody handling the food, us, kids who are going to eat their food, everybody needs to be washing our hands before, and it's a great idea to do it after as well. All components. So we serve a 5-component snack. I don't know if I can remember this. It's fruit, vegetable, grain, dairy, and protein. Yeah, I did it. Every kid needs to get everything served, and usually it comes in a brown paper bag that admittedly rips fairly easily, so maybe 2 hands is a good idea with those, and then they return what they don't want. And this serves 2 purposes. One, it starts to help kids be exposed to new foods, which they need to do several times, 7 to 10, before they can decide whether they want it or like it. And then second, it's equality, food access. Everybody, we can say with certainty, everybody got access to the same amounts of food, right? So that's why it's a federal requirement. Now, on that sort of food exposure thing, I came from a childcare background where it was our job to ensure that kids were eating balanced meals. So we would say, sit, eat 10 trying bites, you're not leaving until you finish your yogurt, that kind of a thing. Boys and Girls Club is not that. So while, you know, part of your job is encouraging them to try new foods, modeling it, I love hummus and snap peas, you should be doing that, and saying, why don't you take a trying bite, encouraging them to do that. We're not required to make sure they eat food. So that's not the game that we're doing here. They can totally return stuff, and you're going to get some kids that only drink the milk and only eat the applesauce and always return the veggies and the protein, and that's okay. That's why we have a community box that some people get the seconds. It's not your battle to fight. Posters. So we have several posters. We put them on a big thing. Those need to be out when we're serving the food. That's another one of those federal requirements. We use metal spoons. Kids are responsible for cleaning them. We were going through a lot of plastic spoons, so we adopted that practice at most of our locations where we have adequate storage. And then I have some tips for making snack exciting. So I've done this enough times that I've got a tip for you. If we're serving an applesauce or a yogurt in a little cup and it's got the pull tab on the lid, right? The clean way to open this, and you should use it and teach kids to use it, is to take it on its opposite corner and tap it a couple of times. And that creates an air pocket around the tab such that when you open it, it's not gonna all over. That's gonna save you a lot of heartache at club. Second thing, sometimes they send us make your own pizzas, an English muffin, a cup of sauce, a bag of shredded cheese. Microwave that all together. Sometimes they send us a wrap with chicken and cheese in it. Microwave that. It is a more dignified and delicious experience. It takes time, but do it. Last tip that I've got for you is if you've got leftover veggies or milk, which I can almost guarantee you're going to be, they don't have to stay as the raw ingredients. They cook really well into a stir fry, into a pasta, into a baking dish, not the veggies necessarily, although carrot cake, I don't know, so get creative with it. Take them home yourself. It's one of the perks of the job is you get extra food that you can have. Also encourage our families to take it home. We want to reduce the stigma of taking free food and resources and make this available to families. And yeah, it's not, usual to have milk cartons in your fridge at home, but it's convenient, and it can be for milk, and it can be for cooking, and it can be for cereal. So remind families, like, take it and use it. Now, a little more in our policies and procedures, most of this, but it's reminders. I want you to, help refocus on this, okay? So main point with supervision is we're trying to maintain a ratio of adults to kids because that's what works. Now, in other childcare facilities that are licensed, they are required to meet like a 1 to 15 minimum, and we are not. But it's just kind of what works. So in order to maintain that ratio, you need to make sure you're able to supervise that amount of kids. So if you need to step away for any reason and have a one-on-one, you need to be able to come back as quickly as possible or stand in such a way that you're able to continue supervising the rest of the space. Now that we've talked about some policies, we're going to move into the ones relating to interacting with others. So this first one is about supervision, and this is pretty common knowledge information. I bet you already have it, but it'll be a great reminder for you. And really the bottom line is the ratio of adults to kids so that we can have enough supervision and it's safe for everybody. We're not beholden to this like other licensed childcare facilities, but this is kind of just what works. And realistically, it's much closer to 1 adult to 10 kids actually at club. Some things we're going to do to maintain ratio is to identify and resolve concerns ahead of time. You'll want to know who doesn't mix well with who. You might want to have assigned seats, and don't forget to use your ears. You may hear them starting to escalate and it's getting a lot louder. That's a cue to move yourself closer to the situation. We call that proximity, and your physical closeness to it can help de-escalate the situation. On the other end of the spectrum, also be listening for it being totally silent, because that might be your sign they're into something they're not supposed to be, or they're somewhere they're not supposed to be. And that's also needing to get closer to the situation. Staff positioning has a lot to do with making sure all areas are supervised. So if there's kind of a nook or a corner, do we have somebody with a line of sight to that area? If the coworkers need to have kind of a check-in, are we standing side by side and continuing to supervise the room while we talk? Likewise, if I have to have a one-on-one with a kiddo, or am I having them stand next to me or in front of me with my back to the wall so that I can continue to maintain the ratio? I am doing regular head counting, making sure I'm seeing everybody and have a radar on everyone. And then I'm also just best practice supervising through participating. So I'm sitting with them and doing the activity myself, sitting with them and eating snack myself. Now, we've got 2 policies here that are about supervising, and the first one we call runner. It's just our way of explaining like a kid that usually gets emotionally escalated and leaves without permission. There's other times kids, are avoiding a situation or something like that, and they'll leave without permission. So here's what we do in that situation. First, one of the staff needs to follow. So it might be you might be like, hey, I got it, I'm going to go follow them. It might be that somebody else says they're going to go do it and they leave the room with the child. In those situations, set the expectation really quickly with the kid. I know you're looking for space and that's why you left, but it's my job to keep you safe and I have to keep eyes on you to do that. So while I'm going to give you your space, I'm not going to bother you for the next 5 minutes, however long it takes. I do need to follow you and keep eyes on you. So please don't go where I can't see you. And just kind of setting that expectation and then not talking anymore. And it's really critical not to be continuing to give stimulus to the situation. You're going to prolong the amount of time it takes for them to de-escalate if you continue to ask questions and try to talk to them when they're in a fully emotional space. So just don't interact. And instead look for signs of de-escalation, which is going to be when they have slowed breathing and a relaxed body posture. And that's when you can offer the choices. And that's going to sound something like, look, I know you don't want to go back in, but we have to. I need to help supervise everybody else, but you have choices in this situation. So one of the options is that we can go back in and I'll make sure no one pesters you and you've got time to yourself and no one's asking you questions. Or, we can go back in, I can help you rejoin the activity and say, we don't want any questions, so-and-so's back, that's all that matters, and just make sure no one makes it weird. And that usually addresses any of their social concerns about rejoining the space and heading back into it with you. So the only other step after that is to write a report. And we always fill out an incident report form when someone is a runner, because if they can't learn a healthier coping mechanism, this is one of those non-sustainable choices that will get somebody removed from clubs. So make sure you document every time those situations happen. Now, the next policy, I would share what I do in this situation, policy-wise, with a runner, because oftentimes that's a powerful motivator for stopping the behavior. So what you do in this situation is first ask the other kids if they know where that child went. Generally, a missing child situation is going to happen if like, oh, I had 21 at pickup and now I'm over at our club location and I've only got 20. Asking the other kids, they often know where that child went. You can investigate it and solve the issue like that. However, sometimes the runner situation is that, you were following them and now they're a missing child because they went somewhere you can't follow, or you lost sight of them and they were too fast for you or something like that. So in that situation, you move on to step 2, which is contacting the people on their emergency contact list till you reach someone and saying, this is the situation, please come on over to the site. We'll keep you posted with details, but we want you here as quick as possible so that when we find them, we're able to work with you and then they can go home early that day. Third that you do in that is call your supervisor. So it could be me, it could be a coordinator, it could be Bailey, it could be the CEO. You need to get somebody from the administrative or leadership team involved so that they can help guide the situation. And you let the parent know that I'm calling them next and they're going to get the police involved. And that's the final step. And step 4 is notifying the police. You have to move quickly when a child is missing. It's a matter of hours before things get more and more serious. So sharing that with somebody who typically gets emotionally escalated and leaves without permission can be, like I said, a deterrent to the behavior. This is a list of physical interactions that are appropriate and inappropriate. Please read through it. This is going to be kid to kid and kid to adult as well. You'll notice a lot of different things on here, but namely hand-holding is an appropriate action, which can be useful for comforting little kids. And also if you have older kids at club that are dating or want to get physical with each other, side hugs and holding hands is where we draw our line. So that is allowed at club. Please read through this list. We'll move into the verbal interactions that are appropriate and inappropriate. And you'll notice that, we've got using their given names or using their preferred names is on this list, and memorizing those. And over here, we've got name calling, which obviously, our kids may call each other names and that's not allowed, but this also applies to staff interactions, right? And one of those could be using pseudo familiar names like, hey bud, or hey pal. And while those might be well-meaning and while those might not be upsetting for some of our kids, sometimes it's going to feel patronizing and it's going to convey a message of, I actually don't remember your name, but I want to feign closeness. So it is really a best practice to memorize and use your kids' names or use established nicknames instead. There's a lot of things on here I could point out. Cursing, if you're dealing with that with your oldest kids, you need to know why you're asking them not to do that. One of the biggest reasons I explain to kids is we're creating an emotionally safe space, and cursing or harsh language is not a part of an emotionally safe space. Words can elicit emotion, which is actually why you're using those words, right? But having an emotionally charged atmosphere is not a safe environment. And that's what we're trying to create at club. So that's why we don't use it here. Next part of that conversation, if they're saying, well, I do it at school and while I do it at home and it's not a big deal, and come on, you even do it when you're with your friends. Yes, you've got a point. Now, here's an important lesson that you are learning and practicing at club, and that's called code switching. That is, we behave differently in different spaces, and it's important to learn this because you're going to have to be in professional settings where you are not to behave the way that you do with your friends, and it will lose you jobs, and you know what I mean. So that is kind of the why that I give. So it's not just because I said so, or I don't know, that's just a rule. Give the mutual respect to explain why that's not allowed at club. Yeah, and then please read through this entire list. I guess I'll talk about sarcasm too. So with your youngest club members, they do not understand sarcasm. They're literal creatures. And so if you use sarcastic humor, you're making a joke at someone else's expense, and that's unkind. Again, not part of an emotionally safe environment. With your older kids, they are starting to understand it. Interestingly, sarcasm is saying the opposite of what we mean. I'm having a great day. And so it's almost in that dishonest territory, which is another reason why I would suggest working it out of your humor and not using it with the club kids. So let's get into it. The first one is about timekeeping. So everybody at Boys and Girls Club is paid twice a month on the 5th and the 20th. And it is the responsibility of every employee to record their hours in whatever way they manage to do that appropriately, and then submit timesheets by the 15th and the last of every month so that you're able to be paid on time. So how do we submit those timesheets? On the Boys and Girls Club webpage at the staff portal. Now I'm going to show you that page right now. If you Google Boys and Girls Club Missoula, our website's going to pop up, but it's also at this address. And then you just go to the last tab across the top here, and then click the staff portal option that appears below. And here at the first side, you can see timesheets, right? So if it were, let's see, for me today, the day is the 23rd. So my relevant timesheet would be the second half. Make sure you get the right one. I would click that open. And it's going to take me to the program Doc Hub, which is where we do our onboarding paperwork through as well. I would click fill a copy, and then the only you option, which might not even be an issue for you all because I am an administrator. And then I would hit here, let's do this. And I'm going to fill in my name. This is very straightforward. My position, and it's March 2022. And then I'm going to go through, and if I got 8 hours that day, and then maybe this was my weekend, I might do my zeros. And for you all, it might look like, you know, a 4.25 because you stayed, you know, for 15 extra minutes to get everything cleaned up. And maybe this day was a 3.25, and one of your hours you spent in a meeting or a training, which is what our second column is here, and otherwise it's zeros. And then I would total that up, and I would, you don't have to click into these to get this to finalize, you know, total this one up as well, add them together, 81, and then I would click sign here, and then it pops in my signature because I've done this before, and then I hit finalize, right? And that's going to send that in an email over to me, and when I process it, I do the rest, and then send it on to our accountant. So that's how you submit your timesheets. Now, yeah, again, how you record your hours is kind of up to you. I do it through Google Calendar. Now, it's very important that you submit these on time because it affects the budget. We allot a certain amount of money to our staff budget, and if that racks up because, you know, you're not submitting it on time and that's going into the next pay period, that's why the policy exists. In addition, it's a pain for me and for the accountant to deal with late time sheets. So, you know, everybody makes mistakes once or twice. Maybe you're having technical issues or you forget or something like that. If it becomes a repetitive issue, that's when I will send you a formal write-up about it. And several instances of you being unable to manage your time well enough and consistent enough to get this done could result in termination, which would be just so silly, but that's why these policies exist, right? Next one is reimbursement. So we do reimburse some for driving, and I'm gonna go back to my drive here and show you the template. So I will message you a copy of this, and it's gonna be very clearly the template one. So if we opened it up, you would not write in this at all. But when it's shared with you, you would right click on it and select make a copy. It's going to show you, it's going to create it. I click on show me where that's at. Here it is, it's copy of template. So now I'm going to open it up and I'm going to say, well, it's not the template anymore. This is Kezha's March, right, mileage reimbursement form. And then I'm going to fill it out, Kezha, my address, all of this, the date, 3/23/22. Where did I start out? I started out at the office, 1515 Fairview Ave. And where did I go to? I went to Low Club that day, and then I would put in the address, which I don't have memorized, and then I was there for observation and coaching, and the mileage. So I would go to Google and look up the mileage, and I know it's like about 18 miles, so then I pop that in here, and you'll see that the expense one is going to automatically update. See, so it's got a formula in there. Now, these dates I could click and drag if I'm doing this every day, if I'm doing the same trip every day, which is oftentimes what our staff are doing, right? So, and it automatically affects those. If it's the 15th or the 20th and I'm ready to get this paid for, I'm going to put in my signature here and the date. And then I'm going to click share, and that's going to go to me, send it to me, and I will process it and we'll get it added to your timesheet. Okay, we do all of that processing with our accountant digitally. So you get your pay stubs digitally too. We can print them if you need them printed out, which has happened on occasion. But for the most part, it's going to email you and it's going to say, oh, here's your your pay stub. You'll need a password to get in there, and we automatically create those. It is the first 4 of your last name. So for me, that's LOVE, lovely. And then the last 4 of your social security number. All together, letters and then the numbers. Last thing, it doesn't matter for like timekeeping, but we want to encourage you to take a 10-minute break each shift. And this is just something to communicate to your coworkers before you need to do it. Okay, absences. Life happens. If you are going to be late or if you are going to need to be gone, you need to let me know 2 hours prior. I get with some lateness, you're not able to let me know that 2 hours prior, but certainly if you're going to be absent, I want to know in advance, and that's so that I can get adequate staff to replace you. If you know you're going to be gone in advance, you can request time off. And so that is also going to be on our portal. Whereas the timesheets are here on the availability, this is where you can click to submit time off requests. And once you finalize that document and it sends to me, it is not done. You don't have that time off until you get an email back from me saying, okay, enjoy your time off. You're approved for that time off. Or if there's an issue because too many people have already asked for that time off, then I will ask to like rearrange that with you or compromise or something like that. And just so you know, yeah, it's first come, first serve. And if it's already full up that time off, then it goes to the person that has had longevity with the organization. And then the next deciding factor is role and responsibility. So if there's more responsibility, you do get priority of that time off. We also use this app currently called Remind, and this is the code to join it. So please look up, download the app Remind, or just join through texting. You can kind of search for directions on how to do that on the internet, and then add this class, and that's going to make sure that you can get reminders and emergency scenario reminders as well, like if there's a winter weather warning or when timesheets are due, or if there's weird schedule stuff, like if it's a full day or early out or something like that. So I need you to sign up for that, and I will ensure you do that, but now's a great time to just go ahead and open that up and start the process. Okay, here's another procedure. It's about our schedule. Just because your club is closed does not mean that you necessarily have the day off work. You'll likely be relocated, and I'll show you the availability change form, and then we'll look at the schedule and I'll explain these things. So let's first look at that form. Again, on availability, you can fill this out like generally around semester if your schedule changes and you need to be there on Tuesdays and Thursdays only because you've got class in the afternoon, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that. You can submit it there for me. And now I'm going to pull up the staff schedule. Okay, so a few things here. This is an example. There's no Bonner Club. And so you can see for Lee that day, the box of when he's working and where is different. And it's this light blue. So he's going to go down and see where the rest of the light blues are, and that's target range. And indeed, you can see that he's subbing in because his name is listed right here. Also, interestingly, these blue boxes, the dark blue boxes at the start, those are for mid-Missoula, right? Because you can see mid-Missoula is that color. And that means that you check in the office before you head out to the club that day. And then also it's very important to note the time that you're arriving, 2 p.m. Generally, or 1 p.m. And then for some of our clubs, arrival time is 2:15, right? Notes will be up here at the top if it's early release, things like that, or when I'm going to be visiting. So that's the schedule, and close that. Okay, that's the presentation. Next up is technology. And this has to do with having your phone on you when you are at club. Certainly you're allowed to do that. In fact, you're encouraged to. If you are taking photos of the kids, which they've signed media release waivers for, you just text those to the communication site coordinator, like I already explained a couple of slides ago. Generally, this is what we're looking for in those photographs. And then as far as like taking personal calls and things like that, it should be for emergencies, and it shouldn't be with any of the club members. And that's for your safety as well as theirs. All right, so we've talked about a couple of policies. This one is very straightforward, and it just states that manufacturing, distributing, possessing, using, or being under the influence of alcohol, controlled substances. This includes like having paraphernalia on you. We need you in an appropriate mental condition for work, so not allowed. This kind of applies to medications as well. Even if it's something benign, you should be taking it outside of your time at club. And same thing for club members as well. There are a couple exceptions, and here's how you deal with them. So the first is if they need an EpiPen, you could administer that, or they could administer that at club in those emergencies, as well as Tylenol. So if like a kid needed something, they had a headache, you can give it to them. You just need to contact a supervisor and a caregiver, verify that this kid has taken this medicine at least once before, double check the dose, which just means like look at the bottle, put it in their hand, double check that's the right amount. They'll take it themselves, and then we fill out an incident report form about it. And follow up with parents during pickup. So to see what an incident report form is, it is also on our portal. And so we kind of go to this behavior section, boom, it's right here. And if it's something like, oh, Tylenol or other first aid, we click the health related accident situation box here, and then fill out the rest of this. Otherwise, typically these are for behavioral issues. Okay, medical emergencies. A, know where your kit's at, make sure that it's stocked. B, keep yourself and your club members safe. That's going to be the most important thing. C, get feedback and support from your coworkers. At least one person at every site is CPR and first aid certified. And then D, basic first aid. Generally, we're cleaning stuff out with soap and water. We're covering it with a bandage. And if it's a head injury, we treat it very seriously, right? So in smaller situations, we're always filling out those incident report forms I just pointed out, but if it's like smaller, superficial, you can kind of wait until general pickup time and then connect with the parents when they're there. If it's important, especially if it's ever a head injury, even if you don't see any bleeding, we call and we ask the parent to come pick their kid up early and check them out, right? As well as AED use, please click on this and check that out so that you feel comfortable using an automatic external defibrillator. I'm not going to go over the training, but this is like a 5-minute video that's really helpful. Mandatory reporting. This is one of our policies that as a club employee, if you have any reason to suspect abuse, and that's abuse of all these different kinds that are listed here, as well as neglect, also listed here, you need to report that information to the CEO. The CEO is going to help you make a call to CFS or CPS if that's necessary, and or just document it internally and keep an eye on it. And this is, you know, you might see a parent being overly stern or physical with a kid. You might hear a kid be afraid to go home. You might see bruises on a child. You might see that they're coming really hungry every day and unwashed or improperly clothed, right? So those are the kinds of things you're looking for and sharing if need be. So those are the most critical policies I wanted to share with you. There's more, and you can access our policies, or I can print them off for you as well. I believe they're on here. Yes, they're listed below on the staff portal.